Some of the statements it makes are quite shocking when they talk about civilizations, and they talk about attacks on European democracies and freedom of speech. I mean, these are things that I think for many of us we just don't recognise at all, and it's pretty shocking to see one of our closest friends talking about us like that.
European leaders have been searching for the right words to reply to Donald Trump's latest criticism. The UK's Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper praised Europe's strength and its determination to support Ukraine. She was responding to comments the president made to Politico.
I think they're weak, but I also think that they want to be so politically correct. I think they don't know what to do. Europe doesn't know what to do. They don't know what to do on trade either. I mean, I look at a lot of the trade, situation that's going on over there. It's a little bit dangerous, but Europe, they want to be politically correct. And it makes them weak. That's what makes them weak.
The German Chancellor Friedrich Merz also pushed back on an American strategy paper that suggested European democracies were under threat. He said
that the Americans now want to save democracy in Europe. I don't see any need for that. If it needed saving, we'd get it done ourselves.
Cooper and Merz's comments are not exactly a full Love Actually response to an American president, but are we beginning to see the evolution of a backbone or not? How much do we need to stand up to Donald Trump as a country and as part of a continent? James MacCleary is Liberal Democrat defence spokesperson. We can speak to him now. James, morning to you. Hi, James, you there?
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us today. Before we talk about those comments more generally, he also said, Donald Trump, that Europe has not produced anything on Ukraine. What do you say to that?
Well, not only is that wrong, but it's actually quite offensive, really. I mean, the UK stands as one of Ukraine's most important partners. We've supported them unflinchingly, and we're very proud to have done so. It's something that has absolute support across the House. It's one of the areas as an MP where I've seen complete unanimity, and I think we can be proud of the support we've given to our Ukrainian friends. And Europe is one of the key supporters of Ukraine in their brave fight against Russian aggression.
Would you like to see a bit more backbone from British politicians? Merz, I think, it goes further than Starmer when it comes to saying things in response to Trump. That quote we just read out there. He seems more willing to say, we can look after ourselves, thank you very much.
Look, the national security strategy that was produced by the Americans a few days ago and released in the middle of the night for some reason is a remarkable document, and one that is actually very hostile to Europe and to the European Union and to all of the things we're trying to achieve. I mean, some of the statements it makes are quite shocking when they talk about civilizations, and they talk about attacks on European democracies and freedom of speech. I mean, these are things that I think for many of us we just don't recognise at all, and it's pretty shocking to see one of our closest friends talking about us like that. So yes, I think there is an appetite to see some tougher language with relation to what Donald Trump is saying and what the sort of the MAGA people who've taken over the US government are saying. And I think it's important to recognise, well, there has been some pushback from US senators and members of the House of Representatives too that don't agree with the approach that the White House is taking.
Is there a bigger point here, though, that Trump might be right in some respects, that we do have massive immigration problems, but as there's a story in the paper today that 9 in 10 failed asylum seekers can't be deported. The Home Office doesn't know where most failed asylum seekers are. We have a problem with our justice system. We do have issues around free speech. People are arrested for things they've said when they shouldn't be arrested, really, in a civilized country, many would argue. It's not completely wrong what Donald Trump is saying, is it?
I think a few things to say on that. One is in the actual national security strategy. I mean, the document itself is inherently really contradictory, and Trump contradicts himself constantly. I mean, he talks about not wanting to interfere in the affairs of countries like Russia and China, and then sticks his oar straight into the affairs of countries in Europe, which are the most democratic and freest countries in the world, and America's closest allies. So there's a level of huge hypocrisy there. There's also, the fact that in America right now, we've got a sort of vigilante force, this ICE force that he set up, kicking people's doors down. They've got people, blowing up boats in the Caribbean in what look like flagrant breaches of international law. So it's probably time that we sort of did turn around and say, look, we are very free continent. We are the birthplace of democracy. Europe produces some amazing things, and it's also the greatest place to live in the world. Satisfaction with living in Europe is the highest anywhere in the world, much higher than the United States. So this shouldn't become some sort of contest. We should be working together. And there are shared problems around immigration, of course there are, and there are always questions around freedom of speech and the limits and the opportunities around that. But just sort of chucking stones at each other is really not the way that we can address these going forward, and it frankly doesn't help anybody.
I'm interested in the practical consequence of that, because I think many people will agree with you, but the question follows is, if there is a new world order, if Trump is behaving this way, if he regards us collectively in such low esteem, what do we do? Is the new world a world where we have to get closer to the EU? Is it where we have to reconfigure NATO so it's not a North Atlantic association, it's predominantly a European association? America is no longer part of our defence. America is no longer our closest ally. Do we have to start talking actually realistically about the world as it is rather than the world we would like it to be?
It's asking very big questions for 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm only halfway through my first cup of coffee. But I would say they are really important questions, and I think what's really interesting right now is we are sitting in a moment where the world clearly is changing around us. The world that we've always known, well, certainly I've grown up with, which is that we have America as this kind of global hegemon, and they're withdrawing from that role, and now we have more of a multipolar world emerging. And yes, we have to adapt. Our European friends have to adapt. We, as Liberal Democrats, absolutely believe that we should be hand in glove with our European friends. We put through Parliament yesterday a bill on asking the government to negotiate a customs union with the European Union, which we think would be a huge boost to British trade and strengthen our country. So, absolutely, that collaborative working in the area of defence. We've got so much shared interest, and of course, we have a shared threat in Russia, which is already conducting an aggressive war on the European continent. So working closely together is essential in what is a fluid and changing environment.
So we should probably actually look more east than west now. Our closest ally should be the EU rather than America. Would you go as far as that?
I think the United States is going to remain a key ally. I mean, America still has, overwhelming military and economic strength, and they still are a very close ally of ours, no matter what Donald Trump is saying this morning or says tomorrow, which could be completely different. I think that you would say that at that level where, as societies, I think Americans consider us to be their closest friends, really. So I don't think that's changed, but I think there is a moment here where we have to stand on our own 2 feet. The one challenge I would say that Trump is giving us, that successive US presidents actually have given us, is that militarily, certainly, we should be able to stand on our own 2 feet, and I think that's a fair challenge.
And we probably can't, can we? I mean, that's the. We talk quite often to retired military figures on this who are sounding the warning all the time. The Defence Investment Plan has not been published. It's supposed to have been published in autumn. It hasn't been published. There's a concern that we are close to war with Russia. Some people regard that the cyber activity puts us actually already at a version of war with Russia. We're probably not in a position to defend ourselves.
We're in a position where we need to scale up. If we want to get to a warfighting capacity, we clearly have a long road ahead of us, but all European nations do. But the amount of money that we're talking about spending in this country and across Europe on defence means that we can do that in fairly short order. But there is an active threat from Russia, and right now, as of today, without American support, there are some vulnerabilities. But I'll be honest with you. Right now, I don't see a scenario where America doesn't support us in any scenario like that.
You still feel that you feel sufficiently confident in that he's not been captured by Russia in so far as that if Russia were to do a further act of aggression, America would come on the side of the Western allies?
I mean, I'm not complacent about this. We have to be able to do it ourselves, and I think it's not worthwhile. I think it's an important challenge we're being given to be able to stand on our own 2 feet and defend ourselves as a continent. But as of today, there are large numbers of US troops based in Europe. They have substantial assets based on the continent, and also Donald Trump, in my view, hopefully won't be president forever, and there will be another administration in a few years' time who may well take another approach. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to scale up our military capacity.
So interesting, James. Great to speak to you. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Pleasure.
That's James MacCleary there, the Liberal Democrat Defence spokesperson. And Kate, it's interesting that Trump's made all these comments because it does animate the conversation we've been having anyway on this programme, which is is it a new world order? How far is it a new world order? The Lib Dems would say this gets us closer to the EU and we should be closer to the EU. The alternative argument about Trump is that he's saying it in a mad way, and he's saying it not necessarily in good faith, and his views on Ukraine are definitely shaped by Russians in his ear. And yet, some of the problems he highlights in the continent of Europe and in the country of Great Britain are there. He's not made them up.
No, I think that is probably the most accurate reflection of what's going on here. I mean, if we try and separate out the Ukraine and Russia element of this, which is difficult, and we will come on to talk about that later on in the programme as well. If we look at what he's actually saying directly about Europe, it's similar to what Donald Trump has been saying for some time. He's talked about European defence before. He's talked about Europe neglecting collective defence before. He's been very cross about that. It seemed that he'd come some way to recognising that Europe had stepped up. Now, though, that seems to have gone backwards. And there is this fundamental divide, and immigration now seems to be the point at which Donald Trump has decided that he just doesn't now feel that Europe and America are in the same place. I mean, the point that a lot of people might make, immigration is clearly an issue here, and we're going to talk about the National Audit Office report shortly, which has highlighted some of the real failings in the immigration system in this country. But the answer cannot be to be rounding up people on the streets and deporting them and erecting large walls, because this is a problem that is going to come to the UK shores whether you like it or not. You're going to have an active approach to immigration that works. This country doesn't have that at the moment, and that, I think, is a legitimate point that Trump is making.
But also, Trump is not making it in good faith. That's the other point, that he's not doing it because he wants to provide policy solutions. He's making it because it sort of fits with his worldview. He calls Sadiq Khan horrible, vicious and disgusting. Now, there are many reasons to criticise Sadiq Khan. There are lots of reasons why London isn't necessarily a perfectly run city. But when you start calling someone horrible and disgusting,
I mean, that's where it becomes. And also he's talking about intervening in European elections. He's talking about choosing candidates in elections. He's talking about backing candidates in elections.
And if Sadiq Khan was called Sam Jones, would he be making exactly the same comments in exactly the same way? Yeah. I just don't think he would. And I might be wrong about that, but I think the lack of good faith in Trump is a problem, and we still truckle to him, and we can't stand up to him. We've got Lisa Nandy on. How far will she want to stand up to Trump? She won't. She can't, because he's still the biggest figure in the playground. Well,
the UK has to retain America as an ally, but I think what's very clear about the Ukraine-Russia discussions is that the UK and Europe are now working very firmly with Zelensky on a plan which has not had the input of the Americans.
Yeah.